Right, so good day. This is the loaf that we actually baked in this video recording, and we'll be using new terms, but stay in tune. It gets easier as you get along with it. Let's begin. So the first thing that we have to do is to melt our jaggery, and we did that with hot water, but actually the total amount of water used for this loaf of bread is 375 grams of lukewarm water, but we actually needed hot water to melt the jaggery. But we've got our little thermometer over there, as you can see, and we will be adding cold water to make up the 375 grams of water, so that our water may be lukewarm, not boiling hot, because we actually needed hot water for the jaggery. Also, we've got 50 grams of sugar, which we call jaggery. So we added the 50 grams of jaggery to the hot water, and now Megan is just going to check the temperature and add the cold water now to make up the 375 grams of water. Remember, it's 50 grams of sugar, but we've realized now that we don't actually want to add sugar to our loaf. We've just been experimenting, and we've realized that we don't want to add the sugar, but of course it might be different for you, but we noticed some differences in our loaf when not using the jaggery. Right now my husband is going to be adding 100 grams of active starter. Please remember to check out the link in the description box to know how to make your starter. And as you can see, the starter is floating, so that means that it's active. And I'm not going to go too much into detail concerning the starter. What you need to do is to just check out the link so that you can know how to make your starter, how to make it active, and how to feed it. And basically the starter is just flour, water, and it just gets into a fermentation process, and that is your starter, which is called wild yeast. Right now he's just going to be mixing that goodie together. As you can see, it is once again 50 grams of jaggery to hot water, and then we just added the cold water to make it a lukewarm temperature, which is about 33, between 33 and 38 degrees, using our thermometer. And the total amount of liquid turned out to be 375 grams of water, and the starter was 100. So just remember when using the scale to always get it on zero whenever you're adding various types of ingredients, so that you can get the accurate amount. Right now he is going to be adding the flour. And the flour we're using is Eureka flour. So the total amount is actually 500 grams of flour, 250 grams of brown flour, and 250 grams of white flour, and both are Eureka flour. So it looks like a part of the video was cut out, but we did add 1 teaspoon of salt to our flour and mix it before we added our starter mixture. Okay, that's all done. Right now we're just going to mix that flour up nicely. Okay, now we're going to give that a good mix. Basically we want to get all of the starter mixture, which was in the liquid, right, mixed up nicely into the flour, and just going to blend it nicely together until it's all mixed up. There we go, giving it a good mix. Still continuing to give it a good mix. Just to recapture, we've got 100 grams of starter added to lukewarm water. The water that we had was 375 grams of lukewarm water. The degrees was between 33 and 38. And also we had 50 grams of jaggery. Of course, you can use sugar if you want to, but we are using the natural jaggery. Another word for jaggery is called gur. Right now we're just having it settle in now. It's nicely mixed. A good thing to do is to oil your bowl, and we're just going to tie it up. After you've basically mixed everything together, you can just pour out your dough nicely, wash the bowl all out, and then obviously the dough needs to go on an oil surface, and then you just add oil onto your bowl and put that mixture back in, and then cover it up with a cloth. We added some elastic so we don't have any air going in and making the dough dry. Then we added just a normal plastic bag, close it up really tightly. Right, so in this video we didn't actually oil our bowl, but we did do it afterwards. But we realized that we actually want to oil it prior to it going into fermentation. Right, so it's been fermenting for about an hour, and we're just going to oil our surface. I'm using coconut oil, the odorless one. You can get this at Discount. And just basically needing to oil our surface so that the dough does not stick onto the surface. Once again, it's been fermenting for 1 hour. We put ours in our oven without the heat on, just the light on, so that the heat of the globe can help the fermentation. So basically the fermentation is where all of the active or the wild yeast gets incorporated into the flour, and this is what causes the dough to rise and also become soft and manageable. So right now, as you can see, our bowl is not oiled, but I would definitely recommend oiling your bowl prior to the fermentation process. So we're just going to make sure we get all the dough, and I'm not using gloves because we're making bread for ourselves right now. And we've got our dough coming out nicely there, and basically you really want to make sure you get all the dough out. So I'm going to be taking a spoon and getting all that dough out. And we did try using water so that we can use our dough because it's very sticky, but I've decided to go with oil instead for the stretch and fold. So right now we're about to start the stretch and fold process. Basically, the stretch and fold has different methods to it. I'm not familiar with the names, but I've just basically acted it out. So I'm gonna get oil on my hands right now so that the dough does not stick on my hands, and I can move the dough really nicely. So we're beginning our first stretch and fold. We want to try to make a box type of stretch and fold, right? This is the method that has been really useful. Right, as you can see, we're just doing a square, having the 4 corners tucked in nicely, stretching and folding that one right there. Right, so that would be basically the first stretch and fold. Getting back oil on my hands, doing our second stretch and fold right now. And yes, we have decided not to use sugar anymore. We've noticed that we've got more air pockets into our bread. We're not using sugar, but of course you can try to experiment. And honestly speaking, whilst making this bread, we've done quite a few changes because we are experimenting into trying to get the best loaf of bread. Right now, that would be our second stretch and fold. As you can see, we've reached all 4 corners. Okay, I'm turning it around right now, and I'm going to be stretching it out again. And as you're stretching and folding, basically having all that wild yeast go really incorporated into the dough, the dough. Okay, I'm not sure if you can hear my daughter, but she's on the outside. I hope that it's not a distraction. I'm not really sure what it would sound like on the recording. Right now we're just stretching out that dough. Okay, so I'm going to be doing my second set of stretch and folds. The first one I did 2 times, and I'm going to go into my second one after I've stretched it out as far as I could. We've actually did quite a lot of improvement prior to this, well, not prior, after this video. So to get the air pockets into our bread, because we didn't actually get the air pockets that we were looking for in this loaf. Okay, now we're going to be doing, I'm not really sure what the term is, but we are stretching and folding almost like a kneading, you know, when you're kneading dough, but we're not going to be kneading it like the regular kneading dough when you're using normal yeast, right? So as you can see, I'm just getting in all the corners into a kneading type stretch and fold. So I did 3 stretch and folds and the kneading stretch and fold, and now we're just going to be turning it over and drawing tension. So the drawing tension helps to improve the spring in our loaf when it goes into the oven. It also keeps it nice and soft, and also forms the shape of the loaf. Once again, we're just going to be drawing tension. So I've got 2 types of tension drawings here. As you can see, the one I'm turning around and then tucking it on the like under. So I'm not just turning it around, I'm sort of tucking it in. And also I'm tucking it in because if you can recall, when I did the kneading stretch and fold, it sort of made a hole in the middle. So when I turn it around, as I'm drawing tension, that hole would close up nicely. I actually right now washed my bowl and adding some oil, so when I place my dough inside, after the second round of fermentation, which will be in the oven with the light on, not the heat on, just the oven light on, so that it draws heat to create that fermentation process, it will not stick onto my bowl. Right, we're just going to have it nicely in there, and then cover it up with our kitchen towel and then our elastic so that no air goes in, and then our plastic bag, closing it up real tightly. There goes our elastic. Of course, one person can do this, you don't need 2 people, but we just did it together. We were at home together, and it just helps when you have a toddler and a newborn baby, making the process a little bit faster. Okay, what you see right now is our dough coming out of the oven a second time, and we're going to be doing another set of stretch and folds. And as you can see, as I'm opening it up, it has been in the oven for about an hour. Right now we're just going to be oiling our surface again, and we actually had it just covered up because we were going to use it again. And right now you can see our dough is starting to form shape. It has also risen, and plop, it goes on the surface really nicely because our bowl was oiled. Right now we're just going to be stretching that dough out. It's basically the same process as the first. So we're just stretching it out as far as we can, ready to do our stretch and fold. Okay, so we're not saying we're doing it perfectly, but this has been working for us. Each one doing their loaf will find what works with them, but this has definitely worked for us, and you can just capitalize on that. So we're getting into our stretch and fold. We just did one right now, and now we're going into doing the second one. Remembering that this has been fermenting in the oven now twice. So we did the first round, which was 1 hour, and the second round another hour. So it has been fermenting for 2 hours, roughly 2 hours. You will definitely go over the time a little bit because you have to do stretch and folds in between, but it has been in the oven for about that amount of time. 2 hours in total, with a break of 1 hour each. And now we're doing the kneading one, the kneading stretch and fold, and as you can see, it sort of creates a hole in the center, which we will be fixing when we do drawing tension. And again, the drawing tension is really important because it is creating the shape as well as the spring in your bread when it goes into the oven. So basically the drawing tension is just pushing it forward and bringing it back using your hands. You just basically push the dough and bring it back. Push the dough, bring it back. Push the dough, bring it back. It's good to have your surface nicely oiled. You don't want any dough sticking on there. So that hole is closing up underneath as we're drawing tension. And when you're drawing tension right now after the second fermentation round, you would have noticed that there are bubbles forming in your loaf. We're going to be closing it up now for the third round of fermentation, which is another hour. So in total, your fermentation process is an hour. And as you can see, I just flipped it back right now. I'm adding the oil, but I just wanted you to notice, if you go rewind it back, that though the hole is closed. The hole is closed because I was drawing tension. I also like doing this in a circular motion. Okay, we're ready for the third fermentation. It's going in right now into the oven. Once again, our oven is not on a heat. It is only the globe, the light that we switched on to create heat. We're closing up our surface so that no flies go onto it. It's summer season. Okay, so right now that is closing up. Real tight, no air going through. Okay, right now it is coming out of the fermentation process after those 3 hours. And once again, the hours are not going to be precise, but yeah, we've got our brown paper going. There's actually packaging brown paper, but you can use parchment paper. We're going to be lining it up onto our colander and adding rice flour. But since recording this, we've actually got the basket, which we got at the Bread Emporium online, and we've been using that ever since. But you can use any bowl that will fit your Dutch oven, since this is going to be shaping it out. And what you need to notice right now is after the third round of fermentation, doing the stretch and fold, we are not going to be stretching out our dough at all. This is a very key point, because the dough has already got the bubbles and the air inside of it. We don't want to mess that up. We don't want to mess up the shape of the dough or the loaf that we're about to form. So as you can see, there's a lot of bubbles. The yeast, the wild yeast, has gone through all of the dough, and we're just going to be gently tucking that in. We do not want to mess up any bubbles right now, because this is going to give your loaf the spring that it needs And we're only doing one stretch and fold, which is more of a tucking in than an actually stretch out and fold, as we were doing in the other stretch and folds. And we're just gonna really hold that nicely, tuck it in, and draw tension, draw tension, draw tension. This is making the loaf nice and round and closing it up under. So others are doing it differently, but this, like I've said, this has been really working for us, especially since we've just been trying it out recently again. So basically the good thing about this is that because our wheat is hybridized, and a lot of people are gluten intolerant and not knowing it, this method is more healthier. And we did put up the link of the hybridized flour and the effects on the body by Barbara O'Neill. So I think we'll just link that up again on the in the description box, and you can have a look at it. It's very, very informative, very important. So we're just drawing tension right now and just tucking it in under so that we can form our shape. Right, so we've got rice flour once again, because the rice flour is not sticky into our brown paper. And thus we're just going to add some more flour on the side, so as it raises it does not stick on the brown paper. But we've been using this brown paper, it's been working really good. Our loaf has not stuck onto the brown paper at all after being baked. I'm not sure what it would be like with parchment paper, but if you have, you can just give it a go and see what happens. We can even see the bubbles right there. There's big bubbles. It's really good. Okay, so right now we also need to just cover this up, and we're not going to be placing this in the oven. We're going to be placing this in the fridge, and this process is called proofing. So while it's in the fridge, it's also going to be rising up and firming up. We're not going to be adding in an elastic. We're just going to be placing this in the fridge for about 2 hours, and it has come out of the fridge for 2 hours, and it firms up nicely, so that when you are going to be scoring it, and the scoring process is just basically using a blade, a razor blade, and forming a line into the dough, and this will help the baking process so that air can go through and just opens up the loaf really nicely. You can even add some really artistic details. We've just basically added some rice flour over our loaf, which has been proofing in the fridge for 2 hours. Remembering that the proofing is also making the dough rise and making it firm on the top, so that when you do blade it, or you cut it open with your blade, that it's nicely firm. So we're just drawing our line, the scoring. So we're just scoring it right now. And there's different types of scoring. I think I'll just place an image at the end of this video, and you can see the various types of scoring you can do for oval loaves as well as for round loaves. So we added one deep one, and then the other one we just have as like a nice shape, you know, just to create some art onto our loaf. But also it helps to raise the loaf when it's in the oven, as the air goes inside of it, because it's been slit open. Okay, another step to remember is we have placed our Dutch oven in our oven on high, on max. I'm not sure what your max would be, but yeah, we were still using our old oven at this time, and it was on high. It's a very old oven, was a very old oven, and our Dutch oven is steaming hot, steaming hot. You want to make sure you've got some heating gloves on, or some gloves, oven gloves, because this one is really it's going to burn you if you don't have on. It was in the oven for about, say, 30 minutes, or yeah, say 15 to 20, 30 minutes. You will know, your oven, but yeah, we had ours in for about that time, and it's steaming hot. We've added water into our pot, our Dutch oven, and we're just going to be placing the loaf that has been proofed and scored into our Dutch oven. And we're just going to be cutting that so that it doesn't cause any hazard. So remember that the oven has to be preheated. So I think while, say, 30 minutes or an hour, say 30 minutes before you're about to bake, you want to just have it on high. Okay, so it has been baking for 20 to 30 minutes, closed with the lid on. And now, oh, it looks good. And now you're just going to take your lid off and place it in the oven for another, say, 15 to 20 minutes, just to brown the top. And it has been baked. We're done. Okay, so just remember, when you're placing it in the oven for the first round, you've got the lid on. That will be for about 20 to 30 minutes. And then you'll be taking it out and removing the lid. And then you'll let it bake. So one of the things that I just forgot to mention is we actually had it on high. And then when that would go into the oven, right, it was on high, on max. To be heated up with only the pot inside of the oven. And then we took it out and placed our proofed loaf into the pot, and we had it on high, on max, for 5 minutes only. And then we lowered our heat to about 180 degrees, which is a bake. That has been working for us. So this is still the lid on. So for the next, say, 25 minutes, because the first 5 minutes the loaf was on max, remained on max, and then we lowered it to 180. And yes, the lid is still on for the first 30 minutes of baking, and then we removed the lid. It was now still on 180 degrees, and that would go on for another, say, 20 minutes. But you can put it on high if you just want your crust on the top to brown faster, and obviously when the lid is off, you just want to basically constantly check it so that it doesn't burn. So that's the loaf right there. And as you can see, it has an ear from the scoring, and that ear is looking really good, meaning it raised really nicely. Please remember to check out the description box as well as the end of this video for the scoring.